What if the biggest barriers to democratic reform weren't technical or logistical, but political will?
Right now, Nigeria's electoral reform bill is in turmoil. Public pressure is mounting over how leaders handle accountability. And the release of new Epstein Files in the US have sent shockwaves across the UK, even reaching the office of the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. Today, here we're going to unpack how reform is being blocked, why political silence is no longer acceptable, and what may still be hidden in the Epstein Files that is shaping worldwide discussions on power and transparency. Welcome to Just with Sherry, guys. I am Sherry, and in case you haven't yet, please subscribe.
Nigeria's National Assembly has been debating the Electoral Act 2022 and proposed amendments aimed at strengthening credibility ahead of the 2027 elections. One of the biggest sticking points has been electronic transmission of results from polling units, a reform many see as critical for transparency. Initially, Nigeria's Senate rejected mandatory real-time electronic result transmission, sparking outrage from civil society groups, youth activists, and opposition leaders who argued that manual collation invites manipulation and erodes public trust. Protests, occupation of the National Assembly, and public pressure followed, with movements like Let Our Votes Count calling for real-time transmission to be restored. In response to the backlash, the Senate has backed a return to real-time result transmission and agreed to form a joint committee with the House of Representatives to harmonize the amended bill before it goes back to the President.
This back and forth highlights a deeper truth. Reform does not happen without pressure. And when lawmakers feel threatened by transparency, they slow down the process. The real question is, why do they feel so threatened by transparency? I mean, isn't what democracy is supposed to be? Isn't it all supposed to be about the people's will, democracy, transparency, honesty, right? A government of the people, by the people, for the people. Isn't that what Nigeria is supposed to be practicing? Or is it just being practiced on paper alone, but in reality, it is a government by a few, for a few, of a few powerful people that have been calling the shots, that have been calling those shots at the expense of the real people, the real Nigerian people, the everyday Nigerian people? Isn't that what we have been seeing? Because I think the gig is up. The gig is up. It is time that real transparency happens, real accountability happens, people actually get elected by the people, and the people that get elected represent the interests of the people that elect them and not their own personal interests. It is time that the people actually get elected by the people and represent the interests of the people that put them there, and not their own personal interests. So, do the right thing, pass the bill, and ensure that from now on, elections get to actually be transparent in Nigeria. That would be a great start, Nigerian senators. Thank you.
Simply put, real-time transmission reduces opportunities for manipulation. Clarity in timelines and safeguards prevent post-election litigation chaos. Consistency in how results are reported builds trust among voters. Delay isn't just legislative, it's political strategy.
When reforms benefit the people and not incumbents or power brokers, resistance follows. That is not unique to Nigeria, which of course then brings us to the next topic, and that is what is currently happening in the UK in relation to the Epstein Files.
Across the world, newly released Epstein documents have had ripple effects across institutions, including the UK. In Britain, growing controversy centers on Peter Mandelson, a senior political figure once appointed ambassador to the United States by Prime Minister Starmer, and his past ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Documents revealed Mandelson maintained contact with Epstein after his 2008 conviction. Epstein Files include emails and other records that materially change what was known about that relationship. Two senior aides to Starmer, including his chief of staff, resigned over the controversy. UK police investigations and searches have taken place as part of broader probes into Mandelson's conduct. Even though Starmer was not personally linked to Epstein, this affair deeply damaged his political standing, forced public apologies, and triggered internal party criticism, including calls for his resignation from figures like Scotland's Labour leader. Despite surviving a leadership crisis for now, Starmer's authority is weaker, and the controversy continues to shape perceptions ahead of future elections.
Don't even get me started on these damn Epstein Files, because that's a whole different story. But what I will say is I do not see how Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, gets to keep his position. Because the reality is, he appointed Mandelson, the same Mandelson that we now see in the Epstein Files. We see had a connection with Epstein even after he was convicted. We may not know exactly what Keir Starmer knew at the time that he appointed Mandelson to his cabinet, but we know that he knew he had a connection to Epstein even after his conviction. And that is enough, quite frankly. That is enough. It is enough for people to demand real accountability. When you make such a decision, it says a lot about your decision-making process. It says a lot about the limits that you have in terms of what you find to be right and what you find to be wrong. And I think the trust that the British people have placed in Keir Starmer has been broken. And I honestly do not think that it will be feasible to try and mend that trust, except of course by resigning. Again, I do not know if he's going to resign, but I'll be surprised if he doesn't. The same applies to the royal family, because Andrew Mountbatten, formerly known as Prince Andrew, not only is in the Epstein Files, but we are now seeing that this information may have been made available to the royal family prior to the files being released. So I just say may, obviously, to be cautious, but realistically, I think they knew. I think they knew way before the public knew. And I think if it hadn't been for the files being released, everybody would have just covered it up. What does that say about the royal family? These statements that they have released, this plain statement released by, I think, the Prince and Princess of Wales, they just don't cut it. They don't cut it because it doesn't really show, number one, it doesn't show what you knew. It doesn't show where you stand in the situation fully. It doesn't show any accountability either. I think the people deserve to know, being the people are paying the taxes, of which some of the taxes go to the royal family. Well, the people deserve to know the truth about the involvement, the extent of the involvement of Andrew Mountbatten, but also the extent of the cover-up that happened when the truth came out. Who knew what? Who covered up what? I don't think it should only be Andrew Mountbatten that should take the fall for this. I think every single person involved in that cover-up should take the fall for this too. That's my opinion. You can have yours, but that's what I...
This is where the Nigeria and UK threads intersect. When systems and institutions resist transparency, public trust collapses. In Nigeria, loopholes and stalled reforms fuel perceptions that credibility is negotiable. In the UK, the handling of Epstein-linked information and appointments tied to figures with documented connections raises questions about vetting processes, political judgment, whether officials are held accountable before scandals break publicly. And that connects to a broader tension with the Epstein Files. Much of the archive remains redacted or sealed, including internal communication, financial records, and emails that may reveal how institutions handled or failed to handle warnings about Epstein's network. Those remaining files could shed light on what elite networks knew, how reputations were protected, which insights were buried for political convenience, and how institutional responses were shaped behind closed doors. We already see repercussions, but we may not have seen all of them yet.
We need all the files released, no matter who is in those files. And I am aware that there's some big names in those files that we don't even know yet. I am aware that possibly, allegedly, if all the files come out, it could really affect a lot of governments. I am aware of that. And I'm not saying that I'm aware of that because I've seen the files, but because it's obvious from the way they're acting about the files, right? If there wasn't real fear about what could happen and what would happen if all the files are released, I think they would have already been released. But the victims need justice. And we need to decide on what side of history we want to sit on. What side of history are we going to be on? We all are part of this world, as messed up as it is. We are all a part of this world. But now we have been made aware that this pedophile, Epstein, led this horrible lifestyle where they were abusing children. And that important dignitaries all over the world were involved in that lifestyle. Either actively or not actively, but in some way were involved. And I cannot say it enough. It's disgusting. It is wrong. And I don't care who is in those files, but accountability needs to be finally given, and it has not happened yet.
Remaining unpublished materials may contain correspondence between political elites and Epstein associates, communications that conflict with public narratives, evidence of institutional resistance to scrutiny, information on how governments assessed or reacted to warnings. Releasing those files won't automatically prove wrongdoing, but full transparency would answer questions that trust depends on. And whether it's electoral laws or political accountability, the lesson is the same.
Systems resist reform until the public refuses to accept silence. Nigeria's electoral reform fight and the fallout from the Epstein-related case in the UK tell a very similar story. Weak systems protect insiders. Transparency is treated as optional, and accountability is delayed, often until crisis forces the issue. Reform isn't just about technology or personnel. It's about political will to put people's trust first. So here's what I want to hear from you. Should all the Epstein files be unsealed? Should political leaders reveal what they know? And in Nigeria, is real-time transmission of electoral results a non-negotiable demand? Let me know in the comment sections. And once again, thank you so much for tuning in today. God bless you. Wish you everything that you wish yourself and some. Bye, guys. Mwah.